This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Over 100 passengers injured in Egypt after a train derails north of Cairo. The University of Cape Town is evacuated as a wildfire rages on South Africa's iconic Table Mountain. And 3 killed in another shooting in the U.S., this time in Wisconsin. Hello and a very warm welcome to Africa Live on CGTN. I'm Lindy Mtongana in Nairobi. Also ahead this half hour, we take a look at the impact of COVID-19 on pregnant women in Kenya. And in sports, Kenya's Eliud Kipchoge back to his winning ways with the NN Mission Marathon victory in the Netherlands. Well, let's start in Egypt, where at least 107 people have been injured in a train accident. According to the country's health ministry, the injuries occurred when train carriages derailed in Kalouba province north of Cairo. A statement from the ministry also said the injured have been rushed to 3 hospitals in the region. This is the second train accident to be reported in the North African nation in recent months. In March, at least 20 people were killed and 200 injured when 2 trains collided near Takhta, over 400 kilometers south of Cairo. Well, let's bring you the very latest now on this train accident. We're joined on the phone by CGTN's Adel Al-Makhraoui in Cairo. Adel, what do we know? What more do we know so far about the cause of the accident and the fate of the casualties?
The investigations are still ongoing. The Prosecutor General, Egypt's top investigation body, is on the case. They have immediately dispatched a team to try to listen to communications devices in the train, the recordings of them, and they're also being on the ground investigating the injuries and those who have been reported deceased because of that accident. It's still not clear what exactly pushed the train to derail. It is not uncommon, though. This is the third accident that happens. The first was a crash between two trains, and another major accident followed in about less than 2 weeks after that, and this is the third in less than a month. Both of the last 2 were about trains derailing. It's usually, previous cases show that it is usually when trains do not slow down at certain curves in the railroad at certain areas. There are some parts of Egypt that are quite known for having frequent train accidents. In general, Egypt reports thousands of train accidents every year. Few of them are usually deadly, or we have high number of casualties, as we're seeing today. So we're waiting for more information from the Transportation Ministry to release data about how the event unfolded, and also the Health Ministry that is looking for the healthcare services being provided for those injured. Most of them are not severe cases. There have been reports of deaths, but the Health Ministry has not confirmed any figures yet.
Adel Al-Makhraoui, thank you so much, joining us there on the line from Cairo, Egypt. And as we heard, investigations are still underway into what caused this train to derail. Now let's turn our attention to another accident, this time in South Africa. Popular tourism and biodiversity hotspot Table Mountain is on fire. Visitors and the nearby University of Cape Town students have so far been evacuated. According to Cape Town Municipality, the fire and rescue service was alerted to vegetation that had caught fire on the eastern flank of the mountain. Firefighters were immediately deployed but are still battling the inferno. 3 helicopters have joined the exercise. South African National Parks, which manages the mountain, has warned hikers to stay away from the area since the fire is not yet under control. And turning to the United States now, let's go to Wisconsin, where 3 people have been killed and 2 others seriously injured in a shooting in Kenosha County. Police say the shooting took place in a bar early on Sunday morning. Authorities have put out an emergency alert warning residents that the suspect has still not been located. The global death toll from COVID-19 has topped a staggering 3 million. This comes amid repeated setbacks in the worldwide vaccination campaign and a deepening crisis in places like Brazil, India and France. CGTN's Wilkista Nyabwa reports.
On Saturday, the world's COVID-19 death toll surpassed 3 million people. The country with the most deaths is the United States, with more than 566,000 people dead. Nearly a quarter of the population has been fully vaccinated. Brazil has more than 371,000 deaths, followed by Mexico, India and the United Kingdom. In Mexico, where COVID-19 has killed more than 212,000 people, only 2.6% of the population has been fully vaccinated. India has recorded over 177,000 deaths since the beginning of the pandemic, putting it in the countries with the highest number of deaths attributed to the pandemic, while deaths in the United Kingdom have topped 127,000. The African continent has so far registered over 4.4 million cases of COVID, with over 117,400 deaths in total. African countries have been vaccinating their populations against COVID-19 for weeks, but progress has been slow. Less than 2% of the 690 million vaccine doses administered to date globally have been in Africa, where most countries received vaccines in small quantities. 45 African countries have received vaccines, 43 of them have begun vaccinations, and nearly 13 million of the 31.6 million doses delivered so far have been administered. The pace of vaccine rollout is, however, not uniform, with 93% of the doses given in 10 countries. And as the numbers continue to rise across the globe, governments are racing to ensure their populations are vaccinated against the coronavirus disease.
Well, the Deputy Director for the African Centers for Disease Control, Dr. Ahmed Ogwal, says vaccinating the continent will help bring the death toll and hospitalizations from COVID-19 under control when enough people get the jabs. Let's listen now to his assessment of the situation in Africa.
Africa is a little bit more complex than many parts of the world, and we are seeing a mixed picture where the western and southern parts of the continent, the numbers have stabilized, while the northern, the central and the eastern parts, the numbers are rising. So in essence, we still have a slight increase in numbers, but we will not say that at the moment it is an additional crisis. But we keep on watching the numbers very closely so that we can react appropriately. Restrictions work when they are implemented effectively and they are supported by members of the public. So governments must start by explaining clearly to the public why the restrictions are being put in place, and then governments must enforce those restrictions, not in a punitive way, but in a way that actually produces the desired results. Restrictions work when they are implemented properly. Vaccinations work, and the effect, in fact, the impact of vaccination is seen when the proportion of the population that has been vaccinated is significant. So in countries that have already vaccinated large parts of their populations, we see very clear evidence that the numbers are dropping, particularly of those that have been hospitalized. And therefore, as Africa continues to vaccinate its population, we know we will be able to see the impact when we reach the desired proportion of those who have been vaccinated.
And turning to China-U.S. ties now, senior climate officials have issued a joint statement on tackling the climate crisis. This follows 2 days of talks in Shanghai between Xie Zhenhua, China's special envoy for climate change affairs, and U.S. climate envoy John Kerry. Now, despite the shared commitment on climate, differences remain on issues like Taiwan. Guan Chao has more.
China and the United States have reached an agreement on climate despite strained relations. In a joint statement, the two sides say they will work together on the climate crisis, saying it's an urgent global issue. The two nations will work together to strengthen implementation of the Paris Agreement, keeping the global average temperature increase below 2 degrees Celsius and further limiting it below 1.5 degrees Celsius. Both countries look forward to the U.S.-hosted Leaders Summit on climate next week. China and the U.S. will take other actions in the short term, including developing respective long-term strategies on net zero greenhouse gas emissions and carbon neutrality, maximizing international investment to support the transition from carbon-intensive fossil fuel to low-carbon and renewable energy in developing countries, and phasing down hydrofluorocarbon production and consumption. Both countries will continue to discuss actions to reduce emissions in various perspectives, like the circular economy and green transportation. The two sides will cooperate to promote a successful climate change conference in Glasgow and a UN Biodiversity Conference in Kunming. This is a busy period for climate talks. At a virtual summit earlier this week, Chinese President Xi Jinping discussed climate change with French President Emmanuel Macron and German Chancellor Angela Merkel. Next week, there will be the Earth Summit Day, and the Biden administration is expected to release new ambitious targets, a sharp change from the policies of Donald Trump. In September, Xi Jinping told the 75th session of the UN General Assembly that China would step up its transition to low-carbon development and take more vigorous action to achieve a peak in CO2 emissions by 2030 and carbon neutrality by 2060. Chinese Vice Foreign Minister Le Yucheng said achieving these targets is no easy task for a developing country.
Some countries are asking China to fast forward the process. That, I am afraid, is not very realistic. When it comes to climate response, China is at a stage different from that of the US and developed European countries. We are still a primary school student, while the US and other developed countries are already in middle school. So it is against the natural course of development if you ask these two groups of students to graduate at the same time.
The recent climate talks came as tense China-U.S. relations were further frayed by a joint statement by the U.S. and Japan. It was issued by the U.S. President Joe Biden and Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga, who met at the same time as Kerry's Shanghai visit. They criticized China on a number of controversial issues, including the Taiwan region. China considers the statement to be interference to its domestic affairs. Le Yucheng warned the U.S. not to cross China's red line.
The Taiwan issue bears China's core interests. We absolutely have no room for compromise on that. China firmly opposes any form of official engagement between the United States and Taiwan. The U.S. should not play the Taiwan card. It is a dangerous card. It is also China's red line. We will not allow the U.S. and Taiwan to cross that red line.
Guan Chao, CGTN.
Well, time now for a short break. Here's what's still ahead on the program. Coming up, in Kenya, fear of COVID-19 is driving some pregnant women to have their babies at home. Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climate and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories. Let's have a look. We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
I've been Djibouti, Tunis, Cairo,
Syria.
Juba, Johannesburg, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Zimbabwe marked 41 years of independence through a virtual celebration that included a televised military parade and an address by President Emmerson Mnangagwa. Our correspondent Farai Makutoya has the details.
For the second year in a row, Zimbabweans have been unable to hold their traditional Grand National Day celebrations. However, the low-key ceremony held at State House should not dampen the mood in a country that says it's weathered several storms and looks set to emerge from them stronger.
My government continues to realize budget surpluses. Inflation, which had become a major source of macroeconomic instability, is being contained. The foreign currency auction system has also enhanced transparency and accountability in the distribution and the use of foreign currency in our economy. The manufacturing sector has remained resilient to the pertinent shocks presented by the imposition of illegal sanctions, natural disasters, and now the COVID-19 pandemic. Locally produced goods and commodities now constitute a larger share of our country's market shelves.
The mining sector is set for an 11% rebound this year as mineral output is ramped up, with bright future prospects from oil and gas resources under development. Those sectors that have been adversely affected are set to get a boost on the back of the country's ongoing vaccination drive. A revival of the hard-hit tourism industry is expected after a mass inoculation of citizens in key resort areas such as Victoria Falls. The Zimbabwean leader paid tribute to international partners, including China, for donating and supplying vaccines, which will help bring an end to disruptive lockdowns and restore a semblance of normalcy.
Citizens are assured that the efficacy of the vaccines we have rolled out has been duly considered and approved by the Medicines Control Authority of Zimbabwe. I therefore call upon the people of our great country, Zimbabwe, to go out in their numbers and get vaccinated.
Zimbabwe plans to purchase 1 million vaccines per month as it pushes to inoculate at least 10 million people to achieve herd immunity. Farai Makutoya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Now, here in Kenya, pregnant women are among those who have been greatly impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. A recent health ministry report suggests that a section of pregnant women afraid of contracting COVID-19 in hospitals or unable to access health facilities due to movement restrictions opted to deliver their babies at home. The government has rolled out measures to ensure pregnant women deliver in health facilities where complications can be tackled should they arise. Wilkistan Yabo reports.
In a village in Kajiado, almost 100 kilometers from the Kenyan capital, a mother comforts a sleepy infant born in the COVID-19 pandemic. When the labor pains started, the young mother was torn over whether to go to the hospital to deliver.
I was so afraid. I thought maybe I would get infected with the coronavirus at the hospital, or maybe my baby would catch it there.
Josephine eventually decided to give birth at the local health facility. Now mother and child are back home safe.
Even when giving birth, I wore my mask, and the health workers took care of me.
But COVID-19 has cast a tall shadow over maternal health in the country. A government report titled Kenya Health Sector Strategic and Investment Plan 2018 to 2023 Midterm Review shows that the number of expectant women who completed their last antenatal clinic reduced from 58.9% in 2019 to 55.1% in 2020. This means that more women could be giving birth at home. Bisil Health Facility in Kajiado Town witnessed this drop in numbers. Normally, the facility would record 50 to 70 births every month. This number fell to about 40 monthly deliveries in the first few months of the pandemic last year. The report believes that a section of pregnant women gave birth at home because they were afraid of contracting COVID-19 or unable to access health facilities due to movement restrictions.
Most of them, they feared to come and deliver in the hospital because they felt that corona is in the hospital. It is not in their homes, yes.
These findings are echoed in a study by reproductive rights organization White Ribbon Alliance Kenya. The exercise conducted in selected counties sought to establish the impact of COVID-19, particularly on reproductive, maternal and newborn health care.
When this happened, everything else was pushed to the back burner. So it's been a process for pushing, of ensuring that we elevate the voices of communities to take them to those decision-making tables.
Different counties have implemented different measures to tackle the problem. Local administrators registered pregnant women to facilitate their movement during curfew hours or beyond restricted areas.
Tunaandika barua as chiefs.
We were writing letters as chiefs or assistant chiefs, but mostly it was the deputy county commissioner to stamp it so they could access the next county.
Inakuwa stamped, so they will use that letter to access the other county.
In Nairobi County, the Wheels for Life initiative has been set up between the government of Kenya, Amref Health Africa and Bolt, a digital taxi app to aid movement of pregnant women during curfew hours.
And quickly they came up with the RMCH guidelines, or the reproductive maternal newborn health guidelines. They came up with the continuity of care, or they pronounced RMCH as a continuity of care guidelines to basically say mothers can go back to health facilities to deliver. But that was a process.
Healthcare workers continue to advise mothers to make every effort to deliver in healthcare facilities.
In case of any complication, we can manage. Whatever we cannot manage here, we refer to the biggest facility, which is a county referral.
They maintain it's the safest place for mothers to be as they bring new life into the world. Wilkis Anyabwa, CGTN.
Coming up in your sports news. Kenya's Eliud Kipchoge back to his winning ways with the NN Mission Marathon victory in the Netherlands.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
We start your sport.